My name is Gerald Gloade. I'm from the Millbrook First Nation, and I'm the Program Development Officer for the Mi'kmawey Debert Cultural Centre. I started off in a career as a graphic designer for 25 years with Lands and Forests and Department of Natural Resources. And from there I got into communications and education, and they got me out there front row center doing delivery of some of these programs. And of course, whenever you talk about the environment, talk about wildlife, that Mi'kmaq part of you comes out. And I've been working the last 19 years with Tim and for Tim and the Mi'kmawey Debert project. I still work for the province of Nova Scotia under the Department of Education and the Mi'kmaq Liaison Office. Mi'kmawey Debert is going to be a cultural centre that's built on an archaeology site. And this archaeology site is like one of the oldest archaeological sites in eastern Canada. And it talks about the birth of our nation. It talks about when people first moved and migrated into this area from the south. And it's like going back some 13,300 years, that's the point of the Wisconsin glaciation. And literally as the ice warmed up along the east coast, it's like temperature change allowed for vegetation. Animals are moving into the area and people are following and migrating their herds of animals. And when you look at our story and you look at all the tools and artifacts that our ancestors left behind, and even right now, it's only the stones, like that wood and the sinew and the bark off of the trees that they use, the hides, that's all gone. It's all been returned to the earth. The only thing is the stones. Just through natural, it's like decomposition. It's like 13,300 years. That type of material gets gobbled up pretty good. But yeah, those stones have definitely had stories to tell. Because you have to understand that 13,000 years ago, when our people migrated into this area, they were very limited to the resources that they could use. East of us was the Atlantic Ocean, north and west was still a solid block of ice. So we had to resource our materials locally. And the very materials that our ancestors created the stones from, they're right here in the Minas Basin in the Bay of Fundy. And when you look at an artifact and talk to geologists about the geological inventory, they can take you to the exact sites that those stones were collected. And just by putting them together on a map, it's like, this is where we found these artifacts. You go to the geologist and they say, well, this is where your ancestors found them in the geological inventory of the province. And even in one particular case I remember, we were working with Eldon George from Parsboro. And we had this artifact that was made from this orange agate. And he said, well, I know 4 locations that place could possibly come from. So he literally took us on the land to the 4 locations and we collected samples of that material. And then just by looking at it under high magnification, you could see the matrixing material that encrusts it, and then you could pinpoint which of the 4 that came from. So it's like this arrowhead came from this source. And you could put it on a map of where the material originated, and you can put where it was found, and you could see trade routes and travel ways of our people. And that was a pretty big story to tell when we were doing that research. We were sort of thinking outside the box. Most cases it's like, well, what kind of tool is it? What is it used for? How old is this? Well, when you got into the stories of places, it was sort of a new, unique way of looking at things. And we had that unique opportunity because of the conditions that they were in. And we took that, of course, to the province of Nova Scotia, the archaeology community, the geological community. And that sort of got us front stage with the federal branches of the same organizations, gone to Ottawa, and then that led to North America. Went to New York City and presented to the board of directors and board of trustees of the Smithsonian Institute, opened the doors to Washington, D.C., went down there and created a memorandum of understanding, an MOU with their people, and then got working with them, not only with the material that was on display at the Smithsonian in Washington, but it opened the doors to Sweetland, Maryland, to the storage facility and the research facilities. Then again, co-presenting with their staff members and going to the World Archaeological Congress. We ended up in Dublin, Ireland. And literally, when the archaeologists from North America found that we have people in our communities that still speak the language. And I remember Phyllis Google was with us and opened the show Monday morning, and she was swamped all week. People requesting, this is part of the Algonquian language. It's like we have these place names in our states. We don't have any indigenous people that speak the language there. It's like, what does this word say in the Algonquian language? And she was interpreting words and telling them, and it was just phenomenal how she could put together the meanings of these places, that Mi'kmaq and Algonquian verb-based language. It's like she was telling people why they were called that. And then we got back from our trip to Dublin, and my boss, Dr. Don Julian, he said, I don't know what you did, I don't know what you said over there. I said, but you got another presentation. He says, it's going to be in 9 months from now. He said, we're going to swear you to secrecy. He said, don't even want you to tell your wife, he told me. And I said, okay. He said, it's going to be the smallest presentation in your life, just 2 people. He said, but it's going to be the biggest presentation. So he's building this up as he's trying to tell me, who am I going to talk to? And he said, Queen Elizabeth and Duke Philip. And sure enough, on June 28th, 2010, we went one-on-one with the Queen of England and her husband, telling the same story and showing them the artifacts and the geological inventory, like the sample of stones that we had here. She said that she was fascinated with the people of the colonies, or the indigenous people of the colonies, that's what it was. And she was tickled pink. Oh, it's more than just about Mi'kmawey Debert. It's about our connection to all the sites and all the other communities that our people live in. It's sort of a jumping point from telling our story. And when you tell a story, you got to start at the beginning. And like any other story, it was once upon a time. And that's what this place is. It's how everything started and how it's connected not only to the people that came there, and even studying the people of the South that migrated. We've got the Nipmuc people from Washington to New York, Nipmuc people. And it's like, again, that Algonquian language family. It's like, that's a part of the people. And that's all people are, right? People are where you come from. It's like Australians come from Australia, Africans come from Africa, Chinese come from China. It's like the Mi'kmaq come from this place, Mi'kmawey, where we moved and stayed. But some of our people moved on, and they became the Mohawks, the Anishinaabe, the Ojibwe, the Cree, still part of that Algonquian family, they recognize the connection to the East. And it's good when you travel all over North America and all these different conferences and education gatherings and hear that their story comes from our story. So, and even as that age, that's the birthplace of our nation. So even as Canadians ourselves, we got a story to tell. We've got tons of international visitors who are coming here looking for that Indigenous connection. It's like Asians, Germans, that fascination that they have with our culture. That's sort of coming from parts of their culture. Asians a lot being told that the indigenous people from North America came across the Bering Strait from China and moved into this and migrated. I'm like, well, that may not be the full story and maybe part of the story for the West Coast, or maybe even some of the northern nations. I said, but there's more than one way to get in here. And we represent another group of national people. And again, even with the German fascination, you find that Karl May, an author and a composer and just a director of a lot of the cultural things, created this series of books that would turn to movies. I mean, there were cartoons and comic books. There were action figures made from these indigenous characters from North America. So it's a part of their history, and they come here looking for that too. It's like we got international visitors everywhere who, there's a piece of us, I guess, in all of them. I was going to say that Mi'kmawey Debert is going to be more than just a cultural center. Education center, it's going to be a portal basically to Mi'kmaq culture. Everywhere is in Mi'kmawey. It's not just about this one little location. It's how we are connected as a nation. And education is our main target. And of course, we know that we're going to have local visitors as well as the education system that can bus into this area. And of course, we're going to have international visitors. Part of my job as a program development officer is taking a look at these little niches that we're looking for and what can we say to sort of capture their attention and to draw them into this place. It's like you got to give them a product that is worth coming to visit. And they're traveling like hundreds, if not thousands of miles. It's like we got some pretty serious competition to keep us going. And even we've developed partnerships with different people along the way. When you talk about geology, of course, you can't do that without talking about the Funday Geological Museum in Parsboro, or even the Funday Geopark. It's like that geopark is located in a piece of real estate here in Nova Scotia called the Glooscap Trail. Glooscap Trail is a tourism travel way that was designated in 1930. That's almost 100 years ago. People have been calling that area the Glooscap Trail. And the reason why it's been called that is because of the cultural significance of the stories that are coming from that site. So many of the story sites of the Glooscap legends come from the Minas Basin and the Bay of Fundy. A lot of the material that we used in order to survive came from that very same area, because on the northern part of it, you've got the Cumberland Fault, or the Cobequid Fault Line, Cobequid Fault Line. And on the south of that, you got the Minas Basin geofracture. Two major fault lines that create semi-precious jewels, which was the desirable material our ancestors were looking for. Now, without a written sort of culture where we had things documented in writing or videos, it's like you couldn't send them online to a website to go view. It's like, so you took this information, you created a story, you embedded the traditional knowledge and ecological knowledge in the story and passed the stories on. And literally it's been like hundreds of generations ago that these stories were created, and they're still being told. And they talk about places of cultural significance because when you go to those places, like we have, and you find material of cultural significance, you know what your ancestors intended. It's like that's what they wanted to do. That was their way of documenting this information. One of my favorite ways answering that material was Dr. Lillian Marshall. She was from Bodeladek and was one of our elders on the Elders Advisory Committee. She said, I love what the education system did with energy conservation and with the recycling program. The education system took it to the children took it home, and now it's just a way of life. She said it may have taken 2 decades, 20 years. She said, but I'd love to see that with Mi'kmaq traditional knowledge and ecological knowledge, teaching the kids how they are connected to the environment and giving them more awareness of environmental concerns. It's like, that's what she wanted to see, is changes in tomorrow in that field. And Dr. Lillian is gone now, but still her work's being done by so many people that she's had the opportunity to teach and to train. And yeah, still looking to fill that gold. Yeah. Well, when Dr. Don Julian was looking at the archaeological site and figured that'd be a great place to create Mi'kmawey Debert, he thought the first thing I'm going to need is I'm going to need an advisory council. And he looked to the educators from all the different communities, and it was a lot of them were the elders of the communities. More than just the 13 nations that we have here, we're looking towards even Quebec and the Gaspé Peninsula, northern New Brunswick. It's like we've had input from all parts of Mi'kmawey. And like even Chief Mizell Joe from Newfoundland, he's still part of organizations and groups that come here on a semi-annual basis to share knowledge and to put this in the flow of culture and put it in the flow of education. It's like, so our Elders Advisory, you take a look at them, they all sit there on the boardroom table once a month. A couple times a year, we have a couple day events where we take them to special places and get their input on things. We travel with them on best practices trips that are connected to tourism, and we have things like an object gallery. We show them an object that is hundreds of years old that depicts a way of life that we no longer celebrate. And then when you show them these artifacts, it draws up their memories, and they're like, Well, these are the words that are associated with that object. And in a verb-based language, when you talk about an object, it tells you about what you're doing with it and how you use it. And there's just so much education. It takes it to a whole new level. My wife is a collector, and she collects history books. And I pulled out all the different books that she had gathered on the history of Nova Scotia. Some of these books are darn close to 150 years old. And when you see the interpretation of what they were saying about the Mi'kmaq people, it made me laugh. It's like, that is so far wrong. Saying that we had no spirituality and that we had no knowledge of the Lord, Jesus Christ. It's like, well, we had knowledge of spirituality. And it went beyond Christianity and centralization, and it went beyond the European contact. It's like, ours goes back millennia. It's like, and you see in these writings that they were writing in, they're not from us. They're about us, but it's not our words at all. The new slogan that we have when it comes with education is nothing about us without us. And that there's the main thing. It's like, yeah, it's like when you want to know something, you ask the people involved in that. Correcting the myths of the past and the things that have been said about us that are not true at all. Correcting them and bringing out that true information is preservation of our culture. This stuff has been told for thousands of years, from generation to generation to today. And we're the knowledge holders that are responsible for passing that on to the next generation, so it continues. And that, to me, is a big part of cultural tourism, because Mi'kmaq just weren't in these buildings and facilities that we create to house this. It's like they're everywhere throughout the land. It's like they're connected to the weather outside, the days of the week, the months of the year. It's like the stars in the sky. It's like everything is a teaching, and everything is connected. If I gave you like a pocket watch and I took the back off of it, you'd see there's nothing more than a series of gears in the form of circles. And to me, that's what Mi'kmaq culture and heritage is. It's that back of a pocket watch that shows how the interconnectedness of everything makes it all work. It's like you've got cycles and patterns that come to our teachings through pattern recognition. Being in this one location, we've been on the planet Earth as it circled the sun over 13,000 times. You see a series of events that are played out during our annual journey as part of our yearly calendar, broken up into 13 little places where the Earth is as it travels around. That's our month of the year. When you talk about the months of the year, you're talking about what's going on in the environment outside during this moon cycle. That there's the names of the months that we have. Understanding that and understanding that progression talks to you about the resources and the material that's available out there. It talks about our semi-nomadic nature as people. We had to be at certain places at certain time to harvest the materials we needed to survive. We had 3 homes, winter home, summerstone, one near the coast. It's like we traveled back and forth. We didn't wander around aimlessly like the history books tell you that we were nomads. It's like, no, we had seasonal homes, and we had to return back to those places year after year. So of course you've got conservation of the resources because you knew you were coming back. It's like you didn't totally take everything out. It's like we talked to Dr. Albert Marshall about Nedugalump, and he's like, you basically means what it comes right down to is taking just what you need and leaving the rest for others. And that to him is Nedugalump in a nutshell. And we know it's much bigger and greater connected to many different things. But through pattern recognition, you're seeing different cycles. A cycle is a reflection of a circle, and circles are sacred. It's like, it's not just a Mi'kmaq thing. All indigenous cultures, and even other cultures on the planet. I do a lot of talking to groups of people from everywhere. It would be New Zealand or from Africa and India. And when I talk about Mi'kmaq culture, they see the connection. It's like, we've got 13 months of the year too. And our months of the year are named after something that goes on in the environment in their culture. So they relate to us right away. And it's like that connection that we have to different places. Africans, like, talked to a series of school teachers that were coming here as a best practices group. And again, they're talking about what the natives are doing and the story that they're telling. And so when I'm there doing my little presentation, this gentleman from Africa stands up and he says, "Listening to you boys like listening to my grandfather." It's pretty cool. It's like, pretty powerful stuff. And different things that, they leave you and they gift you the pieces of their culture. When you get a busload of international people coming together for a geological conference, and you take them out on the land, and you literally show them where these things are found and how they were created and the environment, unique conditions that create these material, then the fascination that they're there is like, this is a living example of what their lives are based on. It's like there's a way that you can connect to people, that makes it a part of their story too. The work of the Elders Advisory Council, they're the ones that tell us what is acceptable to present, what is too sacred to present. And we talk about places, but in a lot of cases, some of them are too sacred to share, and they don't want those shared. But there's other things that people collect, and for example, artifacts themselves. Artifacts are found throughout Nova Scotia. There's a publication that's produced. It's called the Overstreet Price Guide to Indian Arrowheads. And it has a value put on different arrowheads from different locations that represent different time periods. People who collect artifacts and spend thousands of dollars for them say, I need that piece. I need that piece from here. I need that to finish my set. And they're up here digging illegally. They're up here taking things away and taking things back. It's like, we don't want to share those locations with people, so they come and take our pieces of history back home with them. And even that's the case with the museum system, with the ethnographers that were here 100 years ago, being told that this tribe of Indians that lives in eastern Canada, they're going to be dead and gone in 20 years. So there was this influx of ethnographers who were recording all of our culture, our heritage, our stories, and they printed books and books and books about it. And there's people with that fascination that need a piece of that. It's like, I need, that to complete my series or my set. And they're willing to do it illegally. And but protection to me, that's the elders. A lot of it, when you're working with people and you're developing these partnerships, you're doing it through common ground, whether it be through other cultural centers that are in here. Mi'kmawey Debert's going to be built in representation of all 13 nations here in Nova Scotia, but it's not just limited to those locations. Those 13 locations were created by centralization, and our people lived everywhere, in every corner of the province. You've even got different towns in the province of Nova Scotia that still have their Mi'kmaq traditional names. And there's connections to where our people used to be and where they traveled and where they harvested things. When you partnership with even like a town, saying, what can I tell people about our town, about the name of our town, and what it used to be as part of history to bring people into my area? They're interested in developing tourism markets in their area too. It's like, how do I get these people in? Tourism is a part of that world of economic development. And to me, it goes back to a more personal side. It's like about my kids, my grandkids. It's like the stories that I have to pass on. It's like that's where I am. It's like I'm not about the tourism money. It's like I tell my stories for free. We sent 2 representatives from our Mi'kmawey Debert team, and that there's Camden Nicholas from Pictou Landing and Basil Johnson from Bottledeck up in Cape Breton. They actually moved to Washington, D.C. for 8 months. And on a daily basis, Monday to Friday, they were in the facility in Washington, D.C., the Smithsonian, choosing all the different artifacts that help tell our stories. And knowing that the facility is going to be open 2026, 2027, it's like we're getting these materials ready to be sent home. Even next week, for example, is one of 4 trips to Washington and the Smithsonian, and we're taking artisans there who actually participate in the creation of these art pieces. They're looking at the condition that they are in their collection. It's like, what can we do to either repair them or stabilize them for transport back home to tell our story here? And again, these are the people who are the craft people. I myself am involved with the first team going down. 6 of us are going down. And the first batch we're looking at is the quill workers. And taking people like Gerald Gloade and her niece, it's like, who is her assistant there, and having them make these assessments as to what needs to be done in order to bring them home. And again, we're doing that with more than just the Smithsonian. We're up there in Gatineau, Quebec at the Canadian Museum of History doing the same thing with the collection there. We've also gone to Philadelphia to look at their collection. Photographs that have already come from the Samuel Peabody Museum there in Handover. And so that's where we stole Leah from. Marketing strategy right now is like getting ourselves organized with the existing tourism groups that are out there. Whether it just be local groups in the communities, whether it be provincial groups, national groups that we have. We have a market of people that are already coming in here. We're looking at venues to highlight these information about Mi'kmawey Debert, so that way they're ready when our doors open. Right now we have a walking trail with interpretive panels, and we literally see thousands of people every year. We see hundreds of people, if not dozens of people every day using the existing walking trails just to get out for a walk and walk their dog or something. It's like, and that goes back to, hey, I was here. It's like, you should go there. Word of mouth has been an amazing thing so far. But like I said, we got some serious work to do, I guess, in the future to get before we open those doors. And again, I'd love to see going to places like a tourism industry in Germany to say, hey, look, this facility is going to be created to go to Asia and show them, like, visual imagery of what our place has. It's like, these are the things that I want to do as part of tourism, is help share that story. It's like what we have to show, what connection that we have. A lot of people don't even understand that geologically, being connected to the geopark, that's how they got their designation through UNESCO, was by including the Mi'kmaq people to say, this is where the story starts. Igo igande ha igo gwandu dana he